Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Today. We're going to begin this morning with some breaking news coming into the CBS newsroom. A federal judge has just dismissed the corruption case against New York City Mayor Eric Adams with prejudice. So I want to get right to CBS News legal reporter Katrina Kaufman, who also happens to be an attorney. So Katrina, walk us through this ruling and why is the with prejudice important?
Vlad, it's great to join you. The reason that with prejudice is important is it means that these charges cannot be brought again. And the judge says that he did this for a very specific reason. He said that everything here, quote, smacks of a bargain and dismissal of the indictment in exchange for immigration policy concessions. So, Vlad, what this judge is worried about is that he thinks the government wants to hold leverage over Eric Adams. If he dismissed the case without prejudice, that would mean that these charges could be brought again. So he thinks that this is the fairest way to handle this case. And he's very clear here that this has nothing to do with the merits of the case against Eric Adams, Vlad. It's that he thinks this is the best way to proceed because he also cannot force the Justice Department to continue prosecuting this case. And he thinks it's fairest to the defendant, Eric Adams, because he expresses that it seems quite clear to him that they were trying to create leverage over him. They were saying that he couldn't proceed with federal immigration policy actions while this case was ongoing, but points to an example where Eric Adams was, in fact, implementing that policy at Rikers Island while the case was happening. So now this case against Eric Adams is dismissed, and these charges cannot be brought again.
All right, Katrina Kaufman breaking down the breaking news this morning from New York City. Katrina, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Vlad.
All right, the word of the day is tariffs. President Trump is announcing his new round of reciprocal tariffs on imports this afternoon. It's expected to be wide-ranging and to impact every country the United States does business with. Some of those countries expected to be hit the hardest are the ones with the highest trade deficits. With the U.S., China tops the list, followed by the European Union, Mexico, Switzerland, and Vietnam. We're taking a live look at the White House, where the president is expected to unveil his tariff plan from the Rose Garden at 4 p.m. We begin our team coverage with CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman joining us now from the front lawn of the White House. So, Willie James, what do we know about the scope of these tariffs?
Hey there, Vlad. Good to be with you. Well, there's limited information in terms of what the president will announce today, but one thing is clear. The White House is moving forward with this plan to put wide-ranging tariffs, reciprocal tariffs, the White House has said, on those nations. And there have been some talk, some officials have mentioned the dirty 10 or 15. Some of those countries you pointed out there, the countries that have the largest trade deficits with the United States. The president has left a little wiggle room, saying that these tariffs that the U.S. puts on other countries will be a lot fairer than other nations, the other nations that put the tariffs on U.S. exported goods. But still, nonetheless, despite all of that concern about rising prices and how this could affect U.S. consumers, the White House is pushing forward with this, saying that the United States will be able to bring in billions worth of dollars to those collecting those tariffs in the years to come, Vlad. So that's part of it, too, when you take a look at how the White House is looking at this.
All right. So many folks are expecting to be impacted by this, Willie James. I mean, the White House, it's so interesting. I've seen conversations by people in the administration that are sort of signaling that there's going to be a little bit of pain, but that at the end of that pain, there's glory. And it doesn't feel like that for people who are already struggling with prices at the grocery store, at the pump, and in their just regular day-to-day shopping.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And if you look at polling, a recent CBS News poll pointed out that Americans want the president to focus on lowering prices more than what he's doing here with this tariff plan. I'll point out that the estimated tariff revenue you see there projected on your screen there, part of it, a lot of the concern here, Vlad, is that not only could this disrupt supply chain, this could potentially raise prices on consumers. There would be retaliatory tariffs as well. Other nations have promised to do just that, including close trading partners like Canada and Mexico. On top of that, you have the cost to reshore production that a lot of times the president, I should say, he oftentimes says that this will bring business back to the United States. But it takes years to get those factories online. If you have a car manufacturer, for instance, who wants to set up shop here in the United States to avoid those tariffs, it will take several years to not only build that factory, but to get the supply chain in order to be able to do just that, to produce those cars here to avoid those tariffs. So any change in the economy, any change in the way that companies do business will be years down the line. But in the meantime, consumers could feel those price changes in the near future, Vlad.
Yeah, and it's not even a guarantee, Willie James, that they'll bring those manufacturing plants back to the United States. That's just an assumption. So, yeah, we'll see how it all plays out. Willie James Inman for us at the White House. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're taking a live look right now at the Dow as Wall Street braces for those tariffs. Markets have been taking a hit for the past several weeks. CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady is here in studio to talk more about that. So how are investors feeling this morning?
Pretty jumpy. I think we've seen that over the past couple of weeks, certainly. It's interesting, though, because we just kind of finished the first quarter for the markets, right? We're starting the second quarter. And I went back and I looked at the biggest swings we had, daily swings. And it's never on a day where there's a big tariff announcement.
I noticed that, too. Oh, my gosh.
Right?
It's so funny that you say that. I was actually... Just last week, I was looking, I'm like, okay, every time we're hyping it in the news, tariffs are coming, the tariffs are coming.
Yes.
The markets are generally sort of just low intensity. And it's on the days that we're not paying attention that you see these huge jumps.
Exactly. And that's where so many people have asked me.
Oh, my gosh, it's so funny you say that.
We're saying.
We're saying, yes, you're right.
So many people have said, do you think that the markets are going to, fall today or have a big upswing if maybe the tariffs are less stringent than we're expecting? And I think we're expecting the unexpected. And you've seen some of that priced into the market. And in fact, it's really on the days where we get consumer sentiment data or negative economic data where you start to see those big swings. So yes, investors are jumpy, but we already did see a very big sell-off on Friday. So a lot of the analysts that I'm talking to are saying the people that were worried kind of got out, and the folks that have stayed in are just kind of in a wait-and-see mode.
So what do we expect the effect to be on currency, specifically the U.S. dollar?
Okay, this is really interesting. I'm going to nerd out here for a second because there's two potential impacts. You could see the dollar get weaker because the idea is that tariffs could mean higher prices if companies pass that cost on to the consumer, which leads to higher inflation. When you have higher inflation, the value of the dollar becomes less. However, if you have companies less incentivized to buy products from other countries, there's less of a demand for, let's say, the yen or the euro, because when a company has to import from another country, they normally have to pay in that country's currency. So they're switching from a dollar to, let's say, a euro. If you have less demand for that and more demand for dollars, that strengthens the dollar. That's where the president has said, well, this is actually going to be good long term. So it's really going to be interesting to see how those two dynamics play out in terms of what you actually see the real impact with the dollar.
And so on those everyday goods that we've been talking about, I mean, Willie James just pointed out that if manufacturing does indeed move to the United States, that could lead to some lower prices down the line. Who knows how long that could be in the immediate short term, let's say between now and the midterms. What could we see?
So you're likely going to see higher prices if companies pass those cost increases on. Now, I think there's a lot of concern about how much would they even be able to do that because consumers are already so price sensitive. Are you going to pay thousands of dollars more for an automobile, or are you just going to hold the one that you have? And in fact, we have this up, the graphic just went up, a CBS News price tracker for items that are likely going to be impacted by tariffs. So you can kind of track over these next few months how this plays out in terms of lumber, groceries, and things like that. I think really, Vlad, consumers, we've seen in the sentiment data, they expect this to cause inflation. And even if it doesn't, you're seeing them already start to pull back because of that concern.
Super nerdy. Harvard Business School, I guess that's what they teach. Very nerdy, but also very informative. Kelly, thank you as always, my friend. Appreciate it. All right. For the international perspective, let's bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio, who's following developments for us from the Bank of England this morning. Ramy, so what is the mood like in the UK?
Yeah, well, similar to what Kelly was saying, stocks here falling and the mood is very anxious. The UK doesn't just have that so-called special relationship politically with the U.S. right ever since World War II, but surprise, it also has an economic special relationship. America is Britain's top trade partner, worth about something like $300 billion in imports and exports in the most recent year that we've seen. Think of things like Rolls-Royce engines going into American fighter jets. Think pharma, AstraZeneca, for example, for Americans with cancer, asthma, drugs there. Think Burberry for luxury goods, if that's your jam. Now Trump looks to use tariffs, maybe 20%, maybe 25%, maybe even 35%. We just don't know, right now, on British exports to force the UK to change its policies in order to benefit the U.S. Brits here, they're angry. We talked to some of them this morning. Take a listen.
I'm an American citizen as well as a British citizen, so we're naturally concerned from a more European perspective. These are considered frightening for us and alarming in terms of our economy, and I'm not really sure to what extent it's going to benefit Americans.
Foolishness. In a word, foolishness. I'm a professional economist, financial economist. We've known since the 1700s that free, open trade creates growth, creates economic prosperity, creates employment, and this is a move in the opposite direction.
And you could hear it there. It's very much a shake my head kind of moment coming out of Brits here. Trump's tariffs are coming just as Britain's economy looks like it's just starting to stabilize, though, Vlad. Tariffs could now wipe out most of the UK's growth this year. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, said the government is preparing for all eventualities and will rule nothing out. And that could imply to mean they could do reciprocal tariffs on the reciprocal tariffs.
So, wow, okay. So that's the view from the Bank of England. What are you hearing as far as the European Union is concerned, Ramy?
Sure. Well, the EU is even more exposed than the UK to potential pain from those tariffs. And that's because the EU, writ large, exports far, far more in terms of goods to the U.S. Vehicles, one massive European export. Got to talk about Germany, of course. The U.S. is Germany's biggest car export market. Talking about Benzes, talking about Beamers, talking about Bugs from VW. European luxury goods, another major export to the U.S., valued at about $100 billion a year. French and Italian brand makers there. When you think of those companies, though, you also think about wines, think about champagnes. Those potentially could be on the block. European pharma, another massive export, and Ireland, just close by, is expected to be one of the worst hit countries. Pharma, as it turns out, is Ireland's biggest export sector. Pfizer, Eli Lilly, again, U.S. companies here have hubs there. Trump has said that he is not happy about them being overseas. And a new YouGov poll reflects European anxiety. A lot of Europeans want to hit the U.S. with retaliatory tariffs.
Wow. All right, Ramy Decencio for us this morning. Thank you, Ramy. Appreciate it. We will have continuing coverage of these new tariffs and the impacts they will have throughout the course of the day. Coming up in our next half hour, we'll get reaction from Canada, China, and Oakland about how they are bracing for what's to come and how this is already affecting some of our nation's ports. Meanwhile, a record-breaking 25-hour speech on the Senate floor, why Senator Cory Booker says he wanted to do this now and how he prepared for it. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. We're following some big election results in Wisconsin and Florida for you this morning. In Wisconsin, liberal judge Susan Crawford beat out conservative judge Brad Schmel. The race was the most expensive judicial race in American history, with supporters from both parties pumping in more than $81 million combined. And in Florida, Republicans' slim majority in the House grew as two candidates won in special elections. Randy Fine defeated Democrat Josh Weil in the state's 6th district. That seat was previously held by Mike Waltz, who, of course, left to become President Trump's national security advisor. And in the 1st district, Republican Jimmy Patronis took home the election win in a seat that was previously held by Matt Gaetz. I want to bring in CBS News political director Finn Gomez. Okay, Finny, let's start first with Susan Crawford's win. This was an early test of voter sentiment for a crucial swing state just months after the start of President Trump's 2nd term. Elon Musk personally spent $25 million of his own money. Pocket change for him, I know, but still, this is what led it to become one of the most expensive races in American history, and it's a local race. In other words, a state race, not a national one.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Vlad. You know, despite that heavy financial backing from Musk and groups tied to him, as you said, over $20 million, as high as $25 million from the world's richest man, and an endorsement, Vlad, from President Trump. The conservative in the race, Brad Schimmel, lost by a 10-point margin to Crawford, the liberal candidate in the race. This result was that, that Musk's millions did not sway Wisconsin voters in this judicial race. It's a notable defeat, Vlad, because it's a battleground state that, as you said, that Trump narrowly flipped in 2024. Crawford ran primarily against Musk's involvement in the state. Here's what she had to say just yesterday.
Wisconsinites fended off an unprecedented attack on our democracy. Our courts are not for sale.
And national Democrats that I spoke to this morning, Vlad, say that this win has established essentially an early game plan heading into the gubernatorial races later this year in Virginia and in New Jersey, and also as we go into the 2026 midterm cycles, which is just around the corner, Vlad.
All right, let's turn now to Florida, Finn, with 2 additional seats in the House. This gives the president a little bit more breathing room as far as his agenda is concerned. But look, I get that Republicans are very happy about this, but Democrats are also celebrating, and that sort of seems, for a lot of people who may not understand how politics work at this level, this sort of three-dimensional chess, fourth-dimensional chess, if you will, why are Democrats celebrating the losses?
Yeah, so yes. Both Republicans in these respective races, Vlad, in the 1st and 6th congressional districts in Florida, won on Tuesday. But these are deeply red seats, vacated by, Matt Gaetz and Mike Waltz. However, their victories came with a dramatically reduced margins compared to the 2024 general election. Petronas won with 57% against the Democrat, a 15-point margin, and Fine by a 14-point margin against the Democrat in that race. But Vlad, if you go back to November, in both these areas, in both these congressional districts, Trump won by plus 31 points. Right? So they essentially cut into that half that amount. And so if you look at that and you look at what happened in Wisconsin, Democrats that I've been speaking to today say this could be, they hope, a national trend and a blueprint on how to run against Trump and the Republicans, and also utilizing Musk as a way to wedge and to galvanize their base voters. And of course, like as I mentioned, there are 2 big races coming up in the fall, the gubernatorial races in Virginia, which is nearby, but also in New Jersey, and where Democrats do feel very strongly that they can win and hold in those respective seats, Vlad.
Fascinating. Finn Gomez for us. As always, Finn, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you, Vlad.
Let's get back to our founding documents, that those imperfect geniuses had some very special words at the end of the Declaration of Independence. It was one of the greatest in all of humanity declarations of interdependence. When our founders said we must mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. We need that now from all Americans. This is a moral moment. It's not left or right, it's right or wrong. Let's get in good trouble. My friend, Madam President, I yield the floor.
Those were the final words of New Jersey Senator Cory Booker's record-breaking 25-hour speech on the floor of the United States Senate. The impassioned speech was in protest of some of the Trump administration's policies, like cuts to federal programs and the recent crackdown on immigration. After his speech, Senator Booker spoke to reporters about how he was feeling. Listen to this.
I'm very sore and weary and tired, but I'm enormously grateful for a lot of folks who sent me their very, very personal stories. They gave me a chance to speak to the pain, hurt, fear, anger, demands of a lot of Americans. I'm so grateful to a lot of my colleagues and a lot of the help that people gave me to do this. I didn't know how long I could go, but I'm so grateful that I lasted for 25 hours.
Senator Booker says he fasted for days leading up to the speech and he avoided water. He said he ended up dehydrated and had to find ways to prevent himself from cramping up. But let's just remember why he decided to pick this moment to do what he did. He was trying to break the record that was set back in 1957 by Senator Strom Thurmond, who in 1957 was actually protesting the Civil Rights Act of 1957 and the desegregation that was happening across the country. And so he took to the Senate floor in 57. Senator Booker said to reporters that had always bothered him, that the longest filibuster up until his was one that protested the right for that Senator, Cory Booker, to actually have a seat in the United States Senate. All right, this morning we are remembering a true Hollywood icon, actor Val Kilmer. He died of pneumonia at just 65 years old. His roles in Top Gun, The Doors, and Batman Forever, Heat, Willow cemented him as a fixture in Hollywood. Sad day all across the country for his millions of fans. We'll be right back. In just a matter of hours, President Trump will unveil new trade tariffs. This comes after a flurry of on-again, off-again tariffs on goods imported from several countries, including Canada, on top of new automotive tariffs set to go into effect tomorrow on foreign cars and parts. CBS News national correspondent Lana Zak is live in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, with how Canadians are all dealing with this. Lana, you're at a car dealership. What are they telling you this morning?
I've been spending a lot of time at car dealerships recently, Vlad, and here in Canada, they are swinging back. Take a look at this. Ontario built, Canadian driven, built by proud Canadians, for proud Canadians. There is a lot of Canadian pride that is happening all across this dealership. It's awash in Canadian flags, balloons, posters. And I want to actually bring in Ken Enser. He is the owner of Windsor Honda here and has been telling me about this Elbows Up campaign intended to really fight back. Yeah. Talk to us.
Exactly. That's a reference to Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe is a Hall of Fame hockey player. Anytime anybody crowded Gordie Howe had his elbows up, and he was always ready to defend his position. And that's why we ran with that theme, because we're ready to defend our position too.
And are you seeing a lot of your customers are responding to it? Are they buying more cars?
It's been very favorable. We had a very good March. April yesterday was phenomenal. We've had customers drive by and they were interested in what's going on here. We had a couple come in and say, we're buying because it's Canadian. We had a lady that bought because it's Canadian. We actually had a non-customer drive by, and she gave us a 5-star Google review and said, I'm not in the market for a car, but the flags look spectacular. That is so patriotic.
Have you ever seen anything like this? I mean, how much are the tariffs igniting a Canadian nationalism?
Immensely. I know personally I'm boycotting right now, and so are a lot of other Canadians, because we are strong, we're resilient, and we're going to get through this.
You're boycotting the U.S.?
Yes, really, I am, but I love Americans. I'm a hockey fan, I'm a Lions fan. I go to all the games. I've made so many good friends over there, and unfortunately, I've made a decision that I'm not going to go over until this is finished.
How concerned are you that these tariffs are going to ultimately drive the prices up on all these vehicles and you won't be able to sell them to people?
Well, we'll be able to sell them to people, but we won't be selling as much, and it will drive the prices up. It'll drive the prices up across the country. It'll drive the prices up in the United States of America as well. So what will happen is sales will decline, and when sales decline, you'll have layoffs, et cetera, which is unfortunate.
Are you trying to capitalize on a new sense of Canadian nationalism and selling these cars right now? And let me also ask you this. Are more people buying because they're concerned about these tariffs? Are you seeing that surge? Are people telling you that they need to get ahead of this?
We have seen that surge. People are concerned about the tariffs. The vehicles we have on the lot right now are tariff-free because they're here on the property.
I'm going to send it back over to you, Vlad. Thank you so much, Ken.
You're welcome.
All right, Lana, thank you. That was a fascinating interview. So you can clearly hear the pride, but also it's bittersweet, right? On one hand, big fan of American sports teams and Americans in general, not a fan of the actions that are being taken by this administration. And so you've also spent some time at car dealerships in Minnesota and Iowa. So what are you hearing from American car buyers?
You know, it's interesting that note about trying to purchase cars right before these tariffs go into effect and before the inventory that's available starts to creep up in price. That's something that I heard from a lot of people who are test driving cars in the Midwest in the U.S. But there isn't anything like this level of American pride or buy Canadian that existed in any of those dealerships. And those are in some ruby red territory. So it's interesting to see how much interest there is in buying Canadian here. But there's a really interesting point that I don't want our viewers to miss. And I know you know this, Vlad. Even when you're talking about buying Canadian or something that was made in Canada or made in the United States, the parts in all of these cars come from both countries, and they cross the border back and forth multiple times during the manufacturing process. And so these tariffs have the implication of increasing prices across the board.
All right, Lana Zach for us, reporting from Windsor, Canada. Thank you, Lana. Appreciate it. Well, as the world braces for President Trump's expected tariffs announcements later today, CBS News foreign correspondent Anna Korn is tracking the reaction from Asia.
Well, China is bracing itself for higher tariffs as President Trump is expected to make major tariff announcements as part of what he's called Liberation Day. Since taking office, Trump has already hit China with additional 20% tariffs over the past 2 months. Well, some economists are expecting an extra 10 to 20% taxes on all Chinese imports. Well, others say there could be some sort of deal if China authorizes the sale of TikTok to US owners, as Trump has pushed for. As the world's manufacturing powerhouse, China has the largest trade surplus with the US, which has been a constant source of irritation for China hawks within the US administration. Well, Foreign Minister Wang Yi doubled down on China's defiant stance, making these comments on an official visit to Moscow. He said, quote, "If the United States persists in pressuring and blackmailing China over tariffs, the Chinese side surely will be resolute in its countermeasures." China has responded at every turn with countermeasures targeting US goods, such as agricultural products, blacklisting American companies to expanding export controls on critical minerals. China is far better prepared this time round, unlike when President Trump declared a trade war during his first term back in 2018. Analysts say the Chinese government has multiple tools it can deploy to cushion the blow of higher tariffs, such as further monetary easing, fiscal stimulus to boost domestic consumption. It could also further ease restrictions on private enterprise. Well, meanwhile, South Korea and Japan, two of the world's largest car manufacturers, are very concerned about the 25% auto tariffs on imported vehicles to the US, which comes into effect tomorrow. South Korea's acting president says the government will urgently prepare support for businesses, while one of its leading car makers, Hyundai, has warned US dealers of a possible price hike. Japan's prime minister says he will continue to push strongly for an exemption from US auto tariffs. Anna Korn, CBS News, Hong Kong.
President Trump's tariffs are already being felt at U.S. ports. Large importers have been preparing for this moment by increasing shipments since the campaign season. I want to bring in CBS News Bay Area reporter Veronica Macias, who's live right now in Oakland, California. Veronica, for our national viewers, the Port of Oakland primarily deals with imports from Asia. What's been the impact?
Good morning, Vlad. But look behind me. Just by taking a look, you can kind of get the perspective of just how many imported goods come into this port here in Oakland. It's considered the 9th busiest container port in all of the U.S. That's according to data from 2023. And yes, 74% of the goods here, they're coming from Asia. So Americans can start to pay more for things like cars, auto imports. car parts are coming from Asian manufacturers that are exporting from Japan and South Korea. And think of all the electronic goods that are coming into this port of Oakland that are also coming from Asia. There's a tariff on semiconductor chips, and these chips, of course, basically considered just the brains to all the imported electronic goods that we use here in the U.S. So tariffs are going to be a big part of all the items that are coming into this port here. We know that this port already is busy this morning, and we know that as soon as these items now come in with these tariffs, it's here that they're going to pay these taxes for these imported goods. They're going to come in and they're paid through an electronic form, then that payment sent to the U.S. Treasury. So Americans using all of these things, and you could see just by all the containers here how much we rely on imported goods and how much it's supposed to generate billions of dollars in tariffs.
All right, Veronica Amacias for us this morning from Oakland. Thank you so much, Veronica. Appreciate your reporting. National Weather Service is warning of multiple intense tornadoes that are possible today across parts of the South. Forecasters warn this may be only the beginning of a multi-day event. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the first look at the national forecast. Hey, Grant.
Hey, Vlad, look, this is a significant concern, not just for this area shaded in that pink fuchsia color. That's where we have the high risk for those EF3 or stronger tornadoes. But we've got 12.8 million people across the South up into the Great Lakes today that are underneath this threat for severe storms. And it's not just tornadoes, but it's going to be very damaging winds and even large hail. We're talking about hailstones 2 to 3 inches in diameter. That can cause significant damage. Let me take down this risk here, Matt, and let me show you the forecast radar as we go throughout the day, where we actually do already have ongoing tornado warnings. This forecast radar shows you, especially there through the mid-Mississippi Valley, Little Rock, over into the Memphis area, all up along the Mississippi Valley into western Kentucky, where we could see that threat for long track, very strong tornadoes, damaging winds in excess of 60 to 70 miles per hour. And then heavy rainfall. All of that is a huge concern. Head over here. Let me show you this. This is the map showing where we have that significant threat for tornadoes today. It's a large area, really from northeastern Texas all the way into Indiana and western Ohio. And that's just today. The threat for severe weather is then going to build east, and we're going to see another area tomorrow with a concern for maybe not as great of severe weather, but still a large area in that slight risk of severe storms stretching from the northeast into the Philadelphia area all the way into Texas again. And then that continues to go as we head into Friday with not just the severe threat, but also looking at the concern for heavy rainfall and flash flooding. Let me drop the map here. Let's head over here. Let's talk about this threat for excessive rainfall, where you're talking about 7, 8, maybe even upwards to 10 inches of rainfall. This is the forecast for today, for that threat for flash flooding in the same area where we have the threat for the severe weather and the tornadoes. And then tomorrow, that threat for flash flooding, dangerous, life-threatening flooding. Vlad, tomorrow, same areas, Memphis up to Paducah, Kentucky. Significant concern for life-altering flooding. We'll really have to watch this area in the coming days as this severe weather unfolds. Back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. Coming up, CBS News exclusively sits down with the wife of a man who the federal government admits was mistakenly deported to El Salvador. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. The Supreme Court is hearing arguments this morning in a case that will determine whether states can block Medicaid funding that is being used at Planned Parenthood. The case stems from a 2018 executive order by South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster. He deemed abortion clinics were unqualified to provide family planning services. The Trump administration is joining the state of South Carolina for arguments at the High Court today. Now we have an update on that disturbing deportation case that we brought you yesterday involving a Maryland man who was mistakenly sent to El Salvador, to prison in El Salvador. CBS News is now hearing from his wife, who says he is not a criminal, despite what the White House claims.
It's crazy. He's not nothing. He's not no criminal. He's not no gang member. He's actually a good father, an amazing father.
I want to bring in CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoyo Galvez, who's been reporting the story for us. So Camilo, what else did this woman tell you about the ordeal she and her family are going through?
Good morning, Vlad. Jennifer told us that the only reason she was able to confirm that her 29-year-old husband from El Salvador had been deported from the U.S. and sent to this notorious maximum security prison in that country known as Secot was because of a photo posted by the Salvadorian government. She was able to identify him through that photo. She said that as soon as she saw it, she broke down in tears and was really shocked and in disbelief because she is maintaining that her husband is not a criminal, that he is not a gang member, and that there's no reason for the U.S. to deport him or for the Salvadorian government to be holding him in this mega prison in that country. She also told us, Vlad, that this has had a huge adverse impact on their 5-year-old son who is disabled and nonverbal. She says that even though he cannot speak, she can sense that he has detected that something went completely wrong here and that he misses his father.
Camilo, also describe for us what she told you about how the arrest went down.
Well, what we understand is that on March 12th, Agrego Garcia was stopped by ICE officials while he was driving with his son, the one with disabilities, and he was told that his status, the one that protected him from deportation, was being changed. And Jennifer told us that she rushed to the location to talk to the ICE officials and was told that her husband was going to be fingerprinted and detained, and she was able to pick up her son, but her husband was, of course, taken away and sent to an ICE field office in Baltimore. Then he was transferred to different detention centers and ultimately ended up in Texas, where he was detained, Vlad, before being deported as part of that now high-profile operation of deportation flights to El Salvador on March 15, rather. And so right now, the open question, Vlad, is what legal recourse and mechanism the family has to contest these allegations that the U.S. government is leveling against Agrego Garcia.
So what's fascinating about this, Camilo, of course, is the president of the United States is known for as somebody who rarely, if ever, apologizes or admits that there was a mistake made, even if it's something that they agree is an egregious error, as Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, did the other day during the briefing, where she said it was a clerical error. I'm paraphrasing here. But they're standing by the deportation, even though they admitted that it's a clerical mistake. So what kind of a precedent are immigration lawyers telling you that this sets?
Well, that is completely right. Even though the administration is conceding and admitting in federal court that it made an administrative mistake here and a legal error, it is still defending the merits of Agrego Garcia's deportations. Why are they saying that? Well, they are saying that it is not in the public interest to return somebody to the U.S. who was alleged to be a gang member. And they're also arguing in federal court, Vlad, that right now, U.S. courts have no jurisdiction over this case and no legal authority to order his return because that man is now in Salvadoran custody and no longer in American custody. And so, again, we get to the question of whether the family actually has any legal recourse here. And right now, it is unclear.
Wow. All right, Camilo, thank you very much, my friend. Appreciate it. Still ahead, the National Weather Service has warned a catastrophic weather event may be on the way for millions across the country. We'll look at where the storms are headed next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. The Justice Department says it now plans to pursue the death penalty against Luigi Mangione, the accused killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Mangione's attorney calls the move, quote, barbaric. Mangione is facing federal murder and stalking charges along with state murder and terrorism charges in New York. He's expected back in federal court later this month. Mahmoud Khalil's legal case will play out in New Jersey, not Louisiana. A federal judge denied the Trump administration's efforts to move it to Louisiana, where Khalil is being held. Had the case gone forward there, it could have been heard in front of one of the nation's most conservative appeals courts. You'll recall Khalil is the former graduate student who was detained by ICE last month over his role in pro-Palestinian protests at Columbia University last year. Secretary of State Marco Rubio determined he posed a threat to U.S. interests under the Immigration and Nationality Act. And the future of TikTok is up for discussion at the White House as a potential ban of the platform is just days away. Sources tell CBS News President Trump will hold a meeting with top officials today. They will be considering final proposals from several U.S.-based investors interested in owning the app. TikTok has until Saturday to divest from its Chinese parent company or face a potential ban in the U.S. President Trump says a deal will be struck before then. All right, let's bring back CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast.
Hey, Vlad, look, today is a really important day for anybody across the midsection of the United States to have multiple ways to get severe weather alerts. This is crazy. 12.8 million people at risk of some type of severe weather today. We're talking about folks from central Texas all the way to, well, not even in the U.S., into Toronto. This threat for severe weather, though, really peaks as we go through the afternoon into the evening. Watch the forecast radar here as we go throughout the day. Well, watch this line of potentially destructive and life-threatening storms move out of eastern Arkansas into western Tennessee. Right there in the Memphis area, we're really going to have to watch out for the potential for some long-track, very strong tornadoes. We're looking at the possibility of EF3 tornadoes or stronger. But really anywhere along that line of storms, all the way into Indianapolis, up towards Toledo, Ohio, we could see that threat for damaging winds, tornadoes, and very large hail. Some places could pick up 3 to 4 inch diameter hailstones. So significant, multiple threats today. You see that high risk area there from southeastern Arkansas all the way into portions of western Kentucky into southern Illinois. The threat for severe weather continues overnight tonight and then recharges into the day tomorrow. The threat for severe storms tomorrow isn't as great, but it still impacts a large part of the country, still from Dallas all the way through the mid-Mississippi Valley, even into portions of the Northeast near Philadelphia. We'll have to watch out for the potential for some severe damaging winds tomorrow. The threat then recharges back to the west. You see, though, some places picking up multiple rounds of heavy rainfall in addition to the severe weather, Vlad. Heavy rainfall and flash flooding, significant concerns through Friday. Back to you.
All right, Grant, thank you very much. That does it for me, folks, but stay right where you are. After the break, Mugo Adiwe is live from San Fran with all the news breaking from coast to coast. This is CBS News.